She couldn't believe it. The human was feasting on the planet's apex predator. The crimson sun cast long shadows across the alien landscape as Lieutenant Liam Drake tore another chunk of perfectly cooked meat from the massive leg bone. The juice ran down his chin, and he wiped it away with the back of his hand, savoring the rich, gamey flavor. The creature had put up one hell of a fight, but in the end, like everything else on this godforsaken rock, it had learned that humans weren't to be trifled with. His campfire crackled merrily, sending sparks dancing into the purple-tinged sky. The remaining portions of the beast, easily the size of a small elephant, were slowly roasting on a makeshift spit. The smell of cooking meat filled the air, mixing with the strange, sweet scent of the local vegetation. Drake's armor, scratched and dented from the recent battle, lay nearby. His black undersuit was torn in several places, revealing fresh scrapes and bruises beneath. But the wounds were worth it. The meat was absolutely fantastic. He was just about to go for another bite when movement caught his eye. Standing at the edge of his camp was quite possibly the most stunning alien he'd ever seen. Her silvery white hair caught the dying sunlight, creating a halo effect around her sharp, elegant features. The form-fitting black armor she wore left little to the imagination, and her purple eyes were wide with what appeared to be shock. "By the ancient ones," she breathed, her translator converting her musical language into standard English. What are you eating?" Drake grinned, holding up the meat. "Dinner. Want some? Plenty to go round." The alien woman, clearly one of the Nixian species he'd been assigned to monitor, took a hesitant step forward. That's a shadow stalker's leg." "Is that what you call these things?" Drake asked, taking another bite. "Nasty piece of work. Tried to ambush me while I was checking the perimeter. Had to teach it some manners." She moved closer, her movements graceful despite her obvious disbelief. "You killed a shadow stalker? Alone? With what weapons?" Drake gestured to his combat knife and standard-issue plasma pistol. "These, mostly. Though I'll admit, there was some hand-to-hand involved. The bastard was tough. I'll give him that." "Hand-to-hand?" Her voice rose an octave. "You fought a shadow stalker in close combat." Well, yeah. After I ran out of plasma charges, didn't have much choice." He patted the log beside him. "I'm Liam Drake, by the way. And you are?" "Lieutenant Avius Starweaver," she replied automatically, still staring at the roasting meat. "I was sent to deliver your monthly supplies and check on your status. I didn't expect to find you feasting on our world's most dangerous predator." Drake laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Most dangerous? Really? Yeah, Guess I should have taken a picture for my report." He held out a perfectly cooked piece of meat. "Sure you don't want to try some? It's actually pretty good. Tastes like a mix between venison and buffalo." Avia sat down beside him, her movements still cautious. "Our warriors tell stories about shadow stalkers. They hunt in packs. They're virtually impossible to kill, and they've wiped out entire settlements. This one was alone," Drake shrugged. "And while it was definitely a challenge, impossible to kill is a bit of an exaggeration. Everything dies if you hit it hard enough in the right spots." Avia watched in fascination as Drake continued eating, her purple eyes studying his every move. The firelight played across his features, highlighting the fresh scratches and the determined set of his jaw. "You really aren't afraid, are you?" she asked finally. "Of what? The local wildlife?" Drake chuckled. "Look, where I come from, we've got creatures that make your shadow stalker look like a house pet. Ever heard of Australian wildlife? Now that's something to be afraid of." "But our most seasoned warriors," Avia began. No offense to your warriors," Drake interrupted, "but humans have been apex predators for a very long time. We didn't get to the top of our food chain by being nice about it." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the sizzling of meat. Avia found herself studying the human more closely. His casual confidence was both infuriating and oddly attractive. The way he moved, even while simply eating, spoke of contained power and absolute certainty in his abilities. "So," Drake said, breaking the silence, "about those supplies?" "Oh, yes, of course." Avia seemed to remember her actual purpose for being there. She gestured toward her vehicle parked at the edge of the camp. "Standard monthly allocation, though I see you've managed to source your own protein." Drake grinned, and Avia felt her heart skip a beat. There was something dangerously charming about this human. "Well, when dinner tries to eat you first, it's only polite to return the favor," he said, standing up to stretch. His muscles rippled under his torn undersuit, and Avia found herself staring despite her best efforts not to. "I should probably document this," she said, trying to maintain her professional demeanor. "A single human taking down a shadow stalker. The council will want to know." "Document away," Drake said, walking over to help with the supplies. "Though I have to warn you, this probably won't be the last time something like this happens. I tend to attract trouble." "Somehow, Lieutenant Drake, that doesn't surprise me at all." The Crimson Sun had barely begun its descent when the first warning signs appeared. The local vegetation started swaying, despite there being no wind, and an eerie silence fell over the camp. Drake's trained instincts immediately put him on alert. "Something's wrong," he said, rising smoothly to his feet. "The wildlife's too quiet." Avia paused in the middle of inventory checking, her elegant features tightening with concern. "The atmospheric readings are showing a massive pressure drop. A megastorm is approaching from the north." "That's not all, Drake muttered, his eyes scanning the perimeter. The hairs on the back of his neck were standing up, a sensation that had saved his life more times than he could count. "We've got company." As if on cue, a low growl resonated through the gathering darkness. Then another, and another. "Shadow stalkers," Avia whispered, her purple eyes widening. "A whole pack. They must have tracked the scent of their dead packmate." Drake was already moving, his movements precise and controlled. He grabbed his armor, quickly securing the essential pieces. "How far is your vehicle?" "Too far," Avia replied, her voice steady despite the fear he could see in her eyes. "We'd never make it before they closed in." A flash of lightning illuminated the landscape, followed by a deafening crack of thunder. The storm was approaching faster than expected, bringing with it sheets of stinging, acidic rain that would make visibility nearly impossible. "My shelter," Drake decided, nodding toward the reinforced structure nearby. "It's designed to withstand both predators and storms. We make a run for it on my mark." The growls were getting closer, and through the growing darkness, multiple pairs of glowing eyes appeared. The shadow stalkers were massive, easily twice the size of Earth's largest predators, with obsidian scales and razor-sharp quills running down their spines. "Trust me?" Drake asked, his hand finding Avia's. She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face, so that despite the deadly situation, she felt an unexpected thrill at his touch. "Surprisingly, yes." "Then run!" They sprinted toward the shelter, moving in perfect sync. Behind them, the pack burst from cover, their thundering footfalls mixing with the storm's fury. Drake and Avia reached the shelter's door just as the first beast lunged. Drake spun, pushing Avia inside while drawing his combat knife in one fluid motion. The shadow stalker's claws scraped against his armor, but Drake's blade found its mark in the creature's eye. It fell with a shriek, blocking its packmates momentarily. He dove inside, mirrored Mesoduranian, and Avia slammed the door shut. The reinforced metal groaned as the remaining predators hurled themselves against it. "The door will hold," Drake assured her, noticing how close they were standing in the confined space. "Though we might be stuck here a while." Avia was breathing hard, but not entirely from exertion. The small shelter forced them into intimate proximity, and she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You saved my life," she said softly. "You would have done the same." Drake's voice was equally quiet, his blue eyes intense as they met hers. Outside, the storm raged and the shadow stalkers prowled, but inside the shelter, a different kind of tension was building. Avia found herself studying the human's features, noting how the emergency lights cast shadows across his strong jaw and highlighted the recent battle scars. "Earlier," she said, breaking the charged silence, "you mentioned that humans are apex predators. Yet you show such control, such restraint." Drake smiled, the expression somehow both dangerous and gentle. "Being the top predator isn't just about strength or ferocity, it's about knowing when to strike and when to protect." "Is that what you're doing now? Protecting me?" "Among other things." His hand came up to brush a strand of silver hair from her face, the gesture surprisingly tender for someone who had just killed a shadow stalker with his bare hands. The storm's intensity increased, and a particularly loud thunder crack made Avia jump slightly, bringing her even closer to Drake. Neither of them moved to create distance. "Your people fear these creatures," Drake observed, his voice low and intimate. But fear isn't always rational. Sometimes what we think we should fear turns out to be exactly what we need. And what about you, Lieutenant Drake? What do you fear? His eyes darkened slightly. Losing control. Wanting something or someone too much. The implications of his words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Outside, the Shadow Stalkers continued their assault on the shelter, their frustrated howls mixing with the storm's fury. But inside, a different kind of storm was brewing. Avia found herself drawn to this paradox of a man, someone who could kill her world's most dangerous predator, yet treat her with such gentleness. The attraction she'd felt earlier was rapidly evolving into something more intense, more primal. "Your species," she said, her fingers tracing one of the fresh scratches on his armor. "You're so different from anything we've encountered. So dangerous, yet so..." "Human?" Drake suggested, his hand catching hers. "Fascinating," she finished, not pulling away. The shelter's environmental controls hummed softly, maintaining a comfortable temperature despite the storm outside. But the air between them felt electric. Drake's thumb traced small circles on her wrist, sending shivers down her spine. "You know," he said, his voice rougher than before, "where I come from, dangerous situations tend to put things in perspective, make you realize what's important." "And what's important right now?" Abby asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Instead of responding verbally, Drake closed the remaining distance between them. The kiss was gentle at first, a question more than a demand. When Avia responded, it deepened, becoming something more primal, more honest. The storm raged on through the night, and the Shadow Stalkers eventually retreated, unable to breach the shelter's defenses. But inside, Drake and Avia discovered that some barriers are meant to be crossed, some boundaries meant to be redefined. The first rays of the alien sun crept through the shelter's small window, painting the interior in shades of crimson and gold. Drake woke first, his combat-trained senses automatically assessing their situation. The storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie stillness broken only by the soft sound of Avia's breathing. She lay curled against him, her silvery hair spread across his chest like starlight. The events of the previous night felt almost dreamlike, but the warmth of her body against his was undeniably real. Their passionate encounter had been both tender and fierce, a perfect reflection of their dual natures. Drake carefully extracted himself, trying not to wake her as he checked the shelter's systems. The main display flickered erratically, and static crackled through the communication unit. The storm had done more damage than he'd anticipated. "Something's wrong." Avia's voice was soft, still heavy with sleep. Drake turned to find her watching him, her purple eyes luminous in the early morning light. She'd wrapped herself in his discarded jacket, the sight stirring something primal in his chest. "Communication systems fried," he replied, forcing himself to focus on the technical issue. The storm must have hit it harder than the shelter's other systems. Avia rose gracefully, moving to examine the damaged equipment. Her proximity sent his pulse racing, memories of their night together fresh in his mind. She seemed to sense his thoughts, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "The main array is completely offline," she confirmed, her fingers dancing over the controls. "Without it, we can't contact either of our commands." "That could be a problem," Drake mused, though part of him wasn't entirely disappointed about being temporarily cut off from the outside world. "Any chance of fixing it?" "Perhaps." She turned to face him, their bodies mere inches apart. "But we'll need parts from my vehicle, and there might still be Shadow Stalkers out there." Drake grinned, the expression both confident and predatory. "Breakfast and a morning hunt? Sounds perfect." They prepared quickly, falling into an easy rhythm as if they'd worked together for years instead of hours. Drake noticed how Avia's movements mirrored his own. Efficient, precise, deadly. Their shared night had created something beyond mere physical attraction, a deeper understanding that transcended species. "About last night," Avia began as they geared up. "No regrets?" Drake asked, securing his armor. "Only that it took a storm and a pack of Shadow Stalkers to make it happen." Her smile was both seductive and challenging. "Though I must admit, watching you fight those creatures was stimulating." Drake laughed, the sound rich and warm. "If I'd known killing apex predators was such an effective courtship ritual, I'd have done it sooner." They emerged from the shelter cautiously, weapons ready. The landscape had been transformed by the storm. Fallen vegetation littered the ground, and the acidic rain had left strange patterns etched into the exposed rocks. The shadow stalkers will have sought higher ground during the storm, Avia explained as they made their way toward her vehicle. But they'll return once they pick up our scent. Let them come, Drake replied, his confidence not mere bravado. After last night, he felt invincible. I've got plenty of room left in my freezer. They reached the vehicle without incident, but the damage was worse than expected. The storm had partially buried it in debris, and several external panels had been corroded by the acidic rain. This might take longer than we thought, Avia said, examining the damage. The parts we need are under all this. Drake was about to respond when a familiar growl echoed across the clearing. 3 shadow stalkers emerged from the underbrush, their obsidian scales gleaming in the morning light. I'll handle them, Drake said, drawing his weapons. You get those parts. Together, Avia countered, her own weapons already in hand. I may not be able to take one down alone, but I can certainly help. The creatures attacked in a perfect coordination, but Drake and Avia moved as one. Where he was raw power and aggressive skill, she was grace and precision. They complemented each other perfectly, their movements synchronized as if they'd trained together for years. Drake caught the first beast with a devastating combination of plasma fire and blade work, while Avia's precise shots kept the others at bay. The fight was intense but brief, ending with 3 more Shadowstalker carcasses adding to Drake's larder. That was... Avia paused, breathing heavily, her eyes bright with adrenaline and something more primal. Extraordinary. Drake pulled her close, their armor clinking together. You're extraordinary, he growled, claiming her mouth in a fierce kiss that tasted of battle and victory. They eventually managed to extract the necessary parts, though the task took longer than strictly necessary due to frequent breaks to explore their growing passion. By midday, they had returned to the shelter and begun repairs on the communications system. You know, Avia said as they worked, her fingers occasionally brushing against his in ways that were definitely not accidental. When I was assigned to check on you, I expected to find a primitive alien barely surviving on our world. Drake raised an eyebrow. And instead I found a man who treats our deadliest predators as dinner ingredients, who fights like a force of nature, and who... She paused, her purple eyes darkening with desire. Who makes me question everything I thought I knew about humans? Is that a good thing? It's an exciting thing. She moved closer, her body fitting perfectly against his. Though I'm still not entirely convinced about your dietary choices. Drake laughed, pulling her closer. Tell you what, once we get these communications fixed, I'll cook you a proper Shadowstalker steak, if you're brave enough to try it. After everything we've shared, I think I'm brave enough for anything you have to offer. The double meaning in her words wasn't lost on either of them. As they worked to repair the communication system, their touches lingered, their glances held deeper meaning, and the air between them crackled with possibilities. The repaired communication system crackled to life just as Drake finished preparing their meal. The smell of roasted Shadowstalker meat filled the shelter, mixing with the exotic spices he'd brought from Earth. Avia watched him cook with a mixture of fascination and desire, still amazed by how effortlessly he handled everything related to the fearsome predators. The urgent message from the Nixian settlement cut through their intimate moment like a plasma blade. Lieutenant Starweaver, the male voice was tense. We have a situation. A large pack of Shadowstalkers has surrounded the settlement. Our defenses are holding for now, but... Drake was already moving, securing his armor with practiced efficiency. How many? At least 15, the voice replied. They're displaying unusual behavior, coordinated attacks, strategic positioning. It's like they're learning. Avia's purple eyes met Drake's blue ones. They are learning. The pack that attacked us yesterday, they adapted their tactics during the fight. Evolution in action, Drake mused, checking his weapons. They're getting smarter, more organized. Probably why they're targeting the settlement now. Our warriors can't handle that many, Avia said, her voice tight with concern. Not if they're using advanced pack tactics. Drake's grin was pure predator. Good thing you've got a human who specializes in hunting apex predators. They loaded their vehicles with additional weapons and supplies. Before departing, Drake packed something extra. Several large portions of cooked Shadowstalker meat. Really, Avia asked, raising an elegant eyebrow. Trust me, Drake replied, his voice carrying that confident tone that sent shivers down her spine. Sometimes the best way to understand your enemy is to consume them. The journey to the settlement was tense but swift. They traveled in separate vehicles, maintaining constant communication. Drake used the time to learn more about the settlement's layout and defenses, while Avia found herself increasingly distracted by memories of their shared nights. You're quiet, Drake observed over the comm. Having second thoughts about bringing a human to your settlement? No, she replied softly. I'm thinking about how much has changed since I first found you eating our world's most dangerous predator by that campfire. Having trouble believing it still? I'm having trouble believing all of it. The way you fight, the way you live, the way you love. She paused, letting the word hang between them. You've changed everything I thought I knew about humans. Is that why you're worried? Because I've disrupted your worldview? I'm worried because I've never felt this way about anyone, and we're heading into extreme danger. Drake's voice softened. Hey, I promised you a proper Shadowstalker dinner date after this is over. I intend to keep that promise. They arrived at the settlement to find the situation even more dire than reported. The Shadowstalkers had indeed evolved their tactics, using the settlement's own defensive positions against it. They'd managed to cut off several crucial areas, including the main power generator. The Nixian commander, a stern-faced male named Theron, greeted them with obvious relief. His expression changed to shock when Drake casually unloaded the containers of cooked Shadowstalker meat. What is the meaning of this? Theron demanded. Psychological warfare, Drake replied with a wink at Avia. Nothing demoralizes an apex predator quite like watching their potential prey feast on their fallen packmates. Before anyone could object, Drake began distributing the meat to the defenders. Some hesitated, but after seeing Avia take a bite, others followed suit. The effect on morale was immediate and dramatic. Now, Drake said, his voice carrying natural authority, let's talk strategy. These creatures are smart, but they're still operating on instinct. We can use that against them. As they planned their defense, Avia watched Drake work. He moved with absolute confidence, his presence alone seeming to inspire the other warriors. When he spoke, they listened, their initial skepticism fading as they recognized the practical wisdom in his words. The key, Drake explained, is to make them think they're the hunters while we're actually leading them into a trap. They're used to being the apex predators. Let's show them what happens when they hunt a species that evolved to be even better predators than they are. The plan was audacious, combining Drake's aggressive human tactics with Nixian technology. As they prepared to execute it, Avia pulled him aside. Be careful, she whispered, pressing close to him. I've grown rather fond of having a human who can outfight our apex predators. Drake's response was to pull her into a fierce kiss that left them both breathless. When this is over, he promised, his voice rough with desire, we're going to have a long discussion about just how fond you've grown. The battle that followed would become legendary in Nixian military history. Drake led from the front, his combat style a perfect blend of raw power and tactical brilliance. The Shadowstalkers, for all their evolved intelligence, had never faced anything like him. So when Avia fought at his side, their movements perfectly synchronized. Together, they turned the tide, leading the pack into carefully prepared kill zones. The sight of the defenders consuming Shadowstalker meat had indeed had the intended psychological effect. The creatures seemed confused, their usual confidence shaken. By nightfall, the remaining Shadowstalkers had retreated, leaving behind several of their pack. Drake immediately organized teams to process the carcasses, ensuring nothing went to waste. You've done the impossible, Theron admitted later as the settlement celebrated, not only defeating them, but teaching us to overcome our fears. Drake shrugged, his arm casually draped around Avia's waist. Humans have a long history of turning feared predators into food sources. It's kind of our thing. The celebration continued late into the night. Drake and Avia eventually slipped away, finding a private moment in one of the settlement's observation towers. So, Drake murmured, pulling her close, still can't believe I feast on apex predators? Avia's laugh was low and seductive. I can't believe a lot of things about you, Liam Drake, but I'm very much looking forward to discovering more. The night air carried the sounds of celebration below, but up in their tower they created their own private victory celebration, one that would add yet another chapter to their increasingly incredible story. The news spread across Nixian settlements like wildfire. A human warrior who not only fought shadow stalkers, but turned them into feasts. Within days of the successful defense, requests for Drake's expertise flooded in from settlements across the planet. "They're calling you the Shadow Slayer," Avia said, tracing the fresh scar on Drake's shoulder as they lay together in his shelter. The morning light painted her silvery hair in shades of rose and gold. Drake chuckled, pulling her closer. "Better than some of the nicknames I had back on Earth, though I prefer how you say my name." "Liam," she purred, demonstrating exactly what he meant. "The High Command wants you to train warriors at 3 different settlements. That means weeks of travel." "I know." His fingers tangled in her hair. "Come with me." "As your liaison officer?" Her purple eyes sparkled with mischief. "As whatever you want to be." Drake's voice grew serious. "I've gotten used to having you watch my back, among other things." The High Command approved their joint assignment with surprising speed. Perhaps they recognized that the human who'd revolutionized their approach to shadow stalkers would be more effective with his chosen partner at his side. Their first stop was the coastal settlement of Meridian Bay, where the shadow stalkers had adapted to hunting in the shallow waters. The local commander, a battle-hardened veteran named Raven, greeted them with barely concealed skepticism. "So," he said, eyeing Drake's casual stance, "you're the human who makes meals out of our nightmares." Drake's response was to toss him a package of dried shadowstalker meat. "Try it. Nothing teaches you to stop fearing something quite like turning it into jerky." The training sessions that followed became legendary. Drake's methods were unorthodox by Nixian standards. He taught them to think like predators while hunting predators. AVA watched with pride as he transformed nervous warriors into confident hunters. "The key," Drake explained to a group of wide-eyed trainees, "is understanding that humans evolved as pursuit predators. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're the most persistent. We learn to hunt things bigger and stronger than us by outlasting them, outsmarting them." He demonstrated his techniques in the field, leading hunting parties that brought down shadow stalkers with increasing efficiency. The sight of him in action never failed to stir something primal in Avia. The way he moved, the absolute confidence in every gesture. Their nights together grew more passionate, their connection deeper. Each successful hunt, each victory over the planet's apex predators, seemed to fuel their desire for each other. The Nixian warriors whispered about their relationship, but their effectiveness as a team silenced any serious objections. At their second settlement, high in the mountain ranges, Drake introduced new tactics for dealing with the altitude-adapted shadow stalkers. He worked tirelessly, pushing himself and his trainees to their limits. "You're driving yourself too hard," Avia said one evening, massaging his tense shoulders. "Even legendary human hunters need rest." "Can't help it," Drake replied, leaning into her touch. "Every time I see those creatures threatening your people, I think about that first night. You looking at me like I was insane for eating one." "I still sometimes think you're insane," she teased, her fingers finding the spots that made him groan. "But it's part of your charm." Their third assignment took them to the desert settlement of Phoenix Point, where the shadow stalkers had evolved to become even more lethal. The heat was brutal, but Drake adapted his techniques, teaching the warriors how to use the environment to their advantage. During one particularly challenging training session, a young warrior asked, "How do humans do it? How do you overcome the fear?" Drake glanced at Avia before answering. "We don't overcome it. We use it. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you thinking. The trick is to make your prey more afraid of you than you are of it." That evening, as they watched the triple moons rise from their private quarters, Avia voiced what had been on her mind. "The training tour ends next week. What happens then?" Drake pulled her into his lap, his blue eyes intense. "That depends. Do you want to go back to just delivering my supplies once a month?" After everything we've shared, she traced the lines of his face, memorizing every scar, every angle. "I don't think I could." "Good," he growled, claiming her mouth in a kiss that left no doubt about his own feelings. "Because I've got plans that involve a lot more than just teaching your people how to hunt shadow stalkers." Their passion that night was particularly intense, fueled by the knowledge that their time together had changed both their lives irrevocably. They'd moved far beyond their initial roles, beyond the human who feasted on apex predators and the alien who couldn't believe it. As they lay together afterward, Avia mused, "You know, When I first saw you eating that shadow stalker meat, I thought you were either suicidal or mad. And now I think you're still mad, but in all the right ways." She propped herself up on an elbow, her silver hair cascading over her shoulders. "You've changed everything. How we see shadow stalkers, how we see humans, how we see ourselves." Drake's smile was tender, but still held that edge of danger that had first attracted her. "You've changed things for me, too. I came here to observe, to gather information. Instead, I found something worth fighting for." The next morning, as they prepared for another training session, news arrived that would test their newfound relationship in ways neither could have anticipated. But that's another story for another time. The recall order arrived at dawn, just as Drake was preparing for another hunting expedition. The message was brief and non-negotiable. "Lieutenant Drake, immediate return to Earth required. Transport arrives in 48 hours. Mission completion acknowledged. Outstanding performance noted." Drake read the message twice, his jaw tightening. Through the shelter's window, he could see Avia demonstrating combat techniques to a group of young warriors. The morning light caught her silver hair, making it shimmer like starlight. The sight made his chest ache in a way no shadow stalker had ever managed. "You're brooding," Avia said later, entering their quarters. She'd sensed his mood during training, though he tried to hide it. "What's wrong?" Instead of answering, Drake pulled her into a fierce embrace, his lips finding hers with desperate intensity. When they finally parted, he pressed his forehead against hers. "Earth is recalling me. Transport arrives in 2 days." Avia went still in his arms. 2 days, but the training program... They've seen the reports. They know the program works. Now they want me to implement it across other colonial worlds. He ran his fingers through her silver hair, memorizing its texture. "They're calling it a promotion. When will you return?" Her purple eyes searched his face, already knowing the answer. "The assignment is permanent. They're setting up a new division, Xenopredator Response Unit. They want me to head it." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Avia pulled away slightly, her expression unreadable. "I see. And what do you want, Liam?" Drake's laugh was bitter. "What I want," he gestured to their shared quarters, to the world beyond. "I want this, United States, the life we've built here. I want to keep teaching your warriors, hunting your monsters, making love to you under those 3 moons. Then stay." Her voice was soft but firm. "Desert my post? That's not what humans do?" Avia challenged. "You've spent months teaching us to think differently about our limitations. Perhaps it's time you question some of your own." Before Drake could respond, an alarm blared through the settlement. They shared a look. They knew that signal. Shadow stalkers. They moved in perfect sync, donning armor and gathering weapons. Personal matters would wait. They had a job to do. The attack was unlike anything they'd seen before. The shadow stalkers had adapted again, using the settlement's own defensive positions against it. But this time, Drake and Avia's trained warriors were ready. "Just like we practiced," Drake called out, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "Show them why humans aren't the only apex predators anymore." The battle was fierce but controlled. The Nixian warriors moved with new confidence, applying Drake's techniques with deadly efficiency. Avia fought at his side, their movements so perfectly coordinated they seemed to read each other's minds. In the heat of combat, watching Avia take down a shadow stalker with moves he taught her, Drake made his decision. The battle ended with a decisive victory. As the warriors processed the fallen shadow stalkers, now seeing them as resources rather than just threats, Drake pulled Avia aside. "Come with me," he said without preamble. "What?" "To Earth. Come with me." His blue eyes blazed with intensity. "They want me to train others to hunt monsters? Fine. But I want my best warrior with me." "Liam." Avia's voice held warning. "I'm serious." He took her hands in his. "Earth needs to see what we've accomplished here. Not just the hunting techniques, but this. Humans and Nixians working together, learning from each other, making each other better. You're talking about more than just a training program. I'm talking about everything." Drake's voice dropped lower, more intimate. "I'm talking about showing Earth that humans and Nixians can be more than just allies. That we can be partners," Avia suggested, her lips curving into a smile. "In every way." He pulled her closer. "Think about it. Earth's wildlife would give your shadow stalkers nightmares. Imagine the stories we could tell about a Nixian warrior feasting on Earth's apex predators. Avia laughed, the sound full of joy and possibility. Now that would be something worth documenting. They spent their remaining time making preparations, both professional and personal. The warriors organized a farewell feast, cooking shadow stalker meat in ways Drake had taught them. Stories were shared, promises made, bonds strengthened. In their private moments, Drake and Avia loved with increased intensity, as if trying to store up enough memories to last a lifetime. Each touch, each kiss, each shared breath seemed more precious knowing their time on this world was ending. The morning the transport was due to arrive, they stood together watching the sunrise. Drake had prepared a special breakfast. Shadowstalker steaks, cooked exactly as he had that first night Avia had found him. "Remember how you couldn't believe what you were seeing?" he asked, cutting into the perfectly cooked meat. "I still sometimes can't believe it," she admitted, accepting a piece. "The human who turned our nightmares into meals, who taught us to be predators instead of prey, who made me fall in love with him." Drake's heart skipped at her words. They hadn't said it before, though they'd both felt it. "I love you too," he said simply, "enough to face whatever Earth throws at us." Even your superior's reactions to a human-Nixian relationship? Drake's grin was pure predator. "Let them react. We've faced worse. Besides," he added, pulling her close, "wait until they see you take down your first Earth predator. That'll shut them up." The transport arrived right on schedule, settling onto the landing pad in a cloud of dust. As they prepared to board, Drake took one last look at the settlement that had become his home. "Ready to shock some humans?" he asked, squeezing Avia's hand. Her purple eyes sparkled with mischief. "Always, though I doubt anything will top that first sight of you feasting on our apex predator." "Just wait," Drake promised, leading her toward their new adventure. Earth has no idea what's coming. Earth's military command wasn't ready for Avia. They'd expected Drake to return with training protocols, mission reports, and perhaps some trophy specimens. Instead, he arrived with a striking Nixian warrior who moved with lethal grace and wore her battle scars as proudly as any human veteran. The debriefing room fell silent as they entered. Drake, now wearing his formal Earth military uniform, couldn't help but smirk at their reactions. Avia had chosen to wear her traditional Nixian armor, modified with human combat inserts, a perfect blend of their two cultures. "Gentlemen," Drake addressed the panel of senior officers, "meet Lieutenant Avia Starweaver, my partner and co-developer of the Xenopredator response protocols." "Partner?" General Richardson's eyebrows shot up. "That wasn't in the mission parameters, Lieutenant Drake." "Neither was revolutionizing the Nixian military's approach to apex predator threats," Drake countered smoothly. "Sometimes the best results come from unexpected situations." Avia stepped forward, her purple eyes scanning the room with predatory assessment. Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing than reports. The Australian Outback Testing Ground proved to be the perfect venue for their demonstration. Earth's deadliest creatures seemed almost tame compared to Shadowstalkers, but they served their purpose. Drake watched with pride as Avia tracked, hunted, and dispatched a pack of feral dingoes that had been terrorizing local settlements. Her movements were poetry in motion, combining Nixian agility with the hunting techniques he'd taught her. "Impressive," Colonel Hayes admitted, watching her through binoculars. "But dingoes are hardly Shadowstalkers." "No," Drake agreed, "they're not. Which is why we brought this." He gestured to a sealed container they transported from the Nixian world. The demonstration that followed became legendary in Earth's military circles. Drake and Avia, moving in perfect synchronization, showed exactly how they'd developed their techniques against Shadowstalkers. The recording would later become mandatory viewing for all Xenopredator Response Unit trainees. That evening, in their private quarters at the base, Avia prepared their dinner. Earth beef, seasoned with spices from both worlds. "They're still in shock," she observed, watching Drake remove his formal uniform. The mighty Earth military, rattled by a human-Nixian partnership. Drake pulled her close, inhaling the exotic scent that always reminded him of their first meeting. "Wait until they see what's coming next." "Oh?" Her fingers traced the familiar scars on his chest. "And what might that be?" "Well," he said, reaching for something in his pocket, "I was thinking about making this partnership even more official, by both Earth and Nixian standards." The ring he presented was unlike anything on either world. forged from Shadowstalker bone and set with gems from both planets. Avia's purple eyes widened in that familiar way that had first captured his heart. "You want to marry you?" "Yes." Drake's blue eyes held that dangerous gleam she loved. "Unless you're afraid of hunting Earth's predators with me for the rest of our lives." Her answer was to pull him into a kiss that left no doubt about her feelings. The following months saw the rapid expansion of the Xenopredator Response Unit. Teams of human and Nixian warriors trained together, learning to face the galaxy's deadliest creatures. Drake and Avia's wedding became a symbol of the program's success. A celebration that included delicacies from both worlds, including specially prepared Shadowstalker meat that had the human guests both terrified and intrigued. Their honeymoon was spent hunting Australia's most dangerous predators, much to the amazement of local authorities. Avia's first encounter with a saltwater crocodile ended with her preparing it in traditional Nixian style, causing Drake to fall in love with her all over again. 1 year after their arrival on Earth, they stood together on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that reminded them both of the first evening by the campfire. "Still can't believe it," Drake asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Which part?" Avia leaned back against him. "The human who feasts on apex predators, the warrior who taught my people to overcome their fears, or the man who convinced Earth's military to accept a Nixian as one of their own." "All of it," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her neck. "Every impossible moment that led us here." "Nothing's impossible." She turned in his arms, her purple eyes meeting his blue ones. "You taught me that. Humans may not be the strongest or fastest species in the galaxy, but you're definitely the most surprising." "Speaking of surprises," Drake's grin turned mischievous, "wait until you see what I've planned for dinner. Please tell me you haven't somehow managed to hunt a Shadowstalker on Earth?" "Better." He took her hand, leading her toward their home. "I've found a way to combine Shadowstalker meat with Earth's spiciest chilies. Time to show you why humans are the only species crazy enough to eat capsicum for fun." Avia laughed, the sound carrying across the ocean breeze. "You're impossible. That's why you love me." "No," she corrected, pulling him close. "I love you because you make the impossible seem normal. Because you turned our fiercest predator into a feast, our greatest fears into strength, and our differences into something beautiful." As they walked home together, the sunset casting long shadows behind them, both remembered that first shocking moment, a human casually eating their world's apex predator. Neither could have predicted where that moment would lead, but both were thankful for every step of their journey. And somewhere in the galaxy, a new legend was beginning to spread, of a human and Nixian who hunted monsters together, who turned terror into triumph, and who proved that love could bridge the gap between worlds.